Many of the facts outlined in the DOJ report had already been uncovered by Texas lawmakers. In the weeks immediately after the mass shooting, a House investigative committee issued a report on the shooting and the response. State Representative Joe Moody was the vice chair of that committee. Thank you for joining us today, Representative.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get your thoughts on the report. Do you feel that the feds had access to more information or uncovered any new details?
Well, look, it's a 600-page report, and it's one that I've been able to go over, during the last 24 hours. I don't see any major contradictions with the investigative report that we issued in the weeks following this horrific tragedy. They certainly were able to have access to federal agents, which we did not have access to. That wasn't part of our investigation. Those agents were not subject to our authority, and so they had that ability, they had that information, and certainly I think built upon the work that we did ultimately.
The DOJ report highlighted failures in how law enforcement gave information to families in the hours and days after the shooting. The failures included a lack of information released in Spanish and death notices delivered by undertrained personnel and insensitive leadership. Is that something you found when investigating the response as well?
Yes, absolutely. That was something that we had uncovered as well. If you recall, we published our report in Spanish in full. Got a translator who was certified to do that, to produce our report as well. We were wanting to wait to issue them simultaneously, but the word that we got from the families was that they would rather have the report be issued immediately, rather than wait another week for the translation to come forward. I do agree with the DOJ's assessment about how the information flowed during the days, weeks, and months after that horrific shooting. Certainly, we heard stories about how some of the death notifications were given at the reunification center. You and I would both hear those stories and would, I think the only way we could describe them is callous. I wouldn't say that was intentionally done that way, but the problem was there was not a lot of coordination. You didn't have the right people in the right place delivering. There's no right way to deliver such terrible information to people who have lost so much. But it certainly could have been better, should have been better, and that was one of the issues that we weren't able to really delve into fully in our report. But we certainly heard from some of the family members about the lack of care, lack of compassion, and some of the real re-traumatizing events that took place in the wake of that tragedy.
Well, we have the DOJ report on top of the Texas House report, as you mentioned. Do you think there will be accountability for that 77-minute delay before stopping the shooter? What needs to happen next?
Well, I think there were a number of things that we did in this past legislative session regarding training, but I think some of the major takeaways from the DOJ report were how these agencies that are, from the smallest school district police department to the federal government, could have done better in coordinating their efforts, could have done better in figuring out who was in control, who was in command. The chaos of that day is something that we certainly highlighted in our report, and the DOJ really delved into in great detail, going through a minute-by-minute accounting of who knew what and when. And I think that the DOJ report goes a long way in validating our concerns about the lack of communication, the lack of leadership. And my hope is that with this more detailed report on top of our report, we're going to be able to continue to work on ways to better prepare for incidents like this, because quite frankly, until we do something about the epidemic in this country of mass shootings, we're going to continue to have to confront these types of situations. And so if we're going to continue to confront them, whether it be in El Paso, Sutherland Springs, Dallas, Santa Fe, Uvalde, that they be done better, that we are able to care for people in their darkest hour.
All right, State Representative Joe Moody, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.